How would you react if someone told you that you could, not just metaphorically but physically, change the world around you, and not in some distant future, but right now?
Be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially.
There's some sense that there's a UN institution that can do all of this.
Yes. It is almost unheard of that people are producing product.
A global stockpile would certainly help ensure more rational and strategic allocation, but the reality is that we don't have the logistics capability even within the UN.
The truth about the invisible enemy. For the first time, final solutions to the problem. If you can spare a few minutes of your valuable time for this, you will probably feel encouraged to look differently not only at the events that mark the period from the beginning of 2020 till now, but our society as a whole. The aim is that this exposé be a first of many, a first commentary in a sequence that will show a completely different way of looking at something that we consider to be the truth. Video that is linked to this will above all show you that you are no longer to perceive yourself as a victim of certain events in question, but rather as someone who can fight back. News that shook the world. Anyone can claim compensation for damages done to them during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the coronavirus pandemic, there were, and still are, two groups of people, divided according to their thoughts on restrictions that authorities applied in order to combat the infection. One group of people accepts them, some people quite calmly, and some with a dose of displeasure, while other group rejects them, amongst whom there is segregation onto the so-called conspiracy theorists and those who are not. However, what applies to almost everyone is not only that they can legally protect their rights, but also that they can profit from that which has unlawfully been done to them. Realistically, can anyone actually prevent that? There have been court cases where individuals are awarded unimaginably large sums of money as compensation for damages as they sued large corporations because, for example, there was no warning sign on a cup of hot beverage cautioning one that they should handle it with care as to not get burnt. If the above is taken into account, then the following question arises. What can then only be achieved in situations in which there are drastic violations of basic human rights? Exactly how much of what is happening are any of us able to understand? This poses a number of extremely logical questions. For instance, why have the authorities never before closed all motorways for an allocated period of time, or at least drastically limited their use, if the official global statistics show that up until today, far more daily deaths are connected to road accidents than are to the coronavirus at its peak. No matter how logical this example is, it can still be perceived as a bit extreme, and so we should consider different ones. So why don't the authorities implement regulations whereby only healthy food can be sold, and thus, for example, close all fast food restaurants, as it has been officially proven that under normal circumstances, millions of people who eat processed food every day, and for whom this is a primary source of nutrition, will get various diseases, amongst which are cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Please refer to the documentary called Supersize Me, from which people die at a rate that is several times higher than the highest recorded one that is connected to the coronavirus. And why not go a step further and completely ban production, marketing and sale of tobacco? Seeing that a cigarette contains approximately 250 ingredients, out of which none are healthy and 1 out of 5 is considered to be cancerogenic, and from which far more people die per day than they did from COVID-19 at its peak. Are we aware of the fact that our survival has never been as seriously threatened as it has been now? How can it be that people who behave absolutely within their rights are treated as criminals all across the world, and are, under the pretext that it is for their own good, placed under house arrest, or even arrested if they refuse to do so, therefore preventing them not only from living normal lives, but also from working and supporting themselves and their families? When one person causes material damage to another, for example, steals an apple from a seller, their deed is treated as a criminal offense, and if they do not compensate for damages caused, however minor it may seem to be in this case, they could be imprisoned, an act that is throughout the world considered to be a correct course of action. However, the logical question that arises from this is, how is it possible that no one is to answer for people's entire careers on which they have been working on for years, having been destroyed without any concrete basis, or for the fact that the loss of income will, for example, amongst others, lead to material poverty, unpaid loans that may lead them to being evicted from their homes, family breakdowns, nervous breakdowns, health issues, and possibly even death? Can we identify and then even eliminate the basic cause of all these recurring problems? So what kind of double standards lead to some rules being legitimate and others simply not? Aren't double standards at the root of all evil in the world? As one person gives themselves the right that they deny another, or in other words, they think that they are worth more than another person and that some special, privileged rules apply only to them. Is this not basically similar to the way in which criminals would think when they decided to rob or maybe even kill someone? Or to the way in which various conquerors throughout history rightfully guarded what was theirs, but at the same time had given themselves the freedom to also take something which wasn't? Will denying us of our basic human rights at some stage jeopardize every family? Aren't government representatives in the service of their citizens, of individuals who elected and employ them and are paying through their taxes to protect their interests, not supposed to forget why they have been elected and not place themselves or somebody else ahead of them? What happens then if those government representatives, instead of protecting their citizens who pay their taxes, whether it's just $1 or much, much more, which is irrelevant seeing that in a democratic system every vote is equal, actually protect large economic systems, which, while millions of people are losing their jobs and even dying, and not only due to the coronavirus but also due to the state to which the global crisis has brought them to, are profiting more than ever before? Is it possible that a small group of individuals can simply declare an individual or even a large group of adults as immature, how one would otherwise treat young children, or perhaps incompetent, how amongst others patients suffering from psychological impairment are treated, to then impose guardianship on them as they are not able to take care of themselves. How likely is it that this is just the beginning of an imminent and exceedingly bigger global disaster? So what is the likelihood that only a month before coronavirus outbreak, representatives of a group of extremely wealthy people and institutions were going to meet for the very first time in history to discuss how one is to react at a global level if a pandemic should occur in the foreseeable future? And that it is just that which happens soon after, even though there were no prior indications for it. And then, just to top it all off, those same people are the ones who are profiting enormously from it. What will happen if we are too late to protect ourselves? So one issue that has come up as particularly important one in relation to all of the above is that what matters now is not only what has happened thus far, but also what is to happen in the future if we do not respond in an appropriate manner right now, and not in a manner and with an attitude that somewhere else, someone else will sort it all out, and I have more important business to attend to at the moment, but rather in a manner that requires of every individual to do everything in their power in order for certain key things in our society to change, never to be repeated again. Because if we don't do it at this particular moment in time, we can be absolutely positive that for everything that is to happen to us or to those closest to us, we are the only ones to blame. There have been, and always will be, calculated, immoral, and dangerous people. And it solely depends on each one of us, decent and honorable people, whether they will be allowed to carry on doing what they have always been doing. Is the current pandemic perhaps just the first in a series of ones that will happen in the future? Will coronavirus mutations, which have existed and always will exist, forever be used as a basis and a perfect excuse so that some other, similar, or even much, much worse events in society could be covered up whenever one small group of people deems it necessary for the sake of public interest, as they have already seen that it could be done? How do we actually protect ourselves, our families, and our friends? Well, please stand invited to visit and support the Freedomdemic movement, whose aim is to, in a new way, spread amongst people not that which someone considers to be the truth, because one piece of information can always be challenged by another, but rather to show a completely different way of looking at problems. The only way to achieve this without running the risk of the movement being censored, which has nowadays taken on a completely new dimension to become a blatant and an extremely arrogant action, is that the messages that this movement has and any further information that develops from them be predominantly spread via products that are used by us all in our everyday lives. Please note, one should be mindful of the fact that COVID-19 is a dangerous virus that can lead to serious health issues and even death, and thus any exposure to it should be avoided and attention should be paid to all official recommendations in order to protect ourselves and those around us. With this in mind, the aim here is to only ask questions while providing no answers, as this is to be done exclusively by each and every one of us individually. This was made in hope of presenting the information concerning the current situation in society in a new way, as no matter how much our views differ from one another regarding many everyday issues, we still have some common goals in life. Abstract. There is an old Chinese proverb that says, "When someone does not know that they know, open their eyes. When someone knows that they do not know, help them. When someone knows that they know, follow them. But when someone does not know that they do not know, stay far away from them." Worldwide lockdown in 2020 at first completely surprised people, and then that surprise in many cases turned into an unusual kind of delight, ones that took notice of explanations which suggested that nothing really happened by accident. However, instead of then asking themselves how they could have allowed something like that to happen at all, they continued to make mistakes that led them to such a state in the first place, where they think only of what will happen tomorrow and are happy with the fact that no one has locked them in that particular moment in time. But had they just taken a look from a somewhat different angle, they would have realized the harsh truth that all that is happening to us today is just the beginning of something much worse than that which we could ever have imagined. And that in fact the main cause of all the problems actually lies in the fact that the vast majority of people belong to the group that is mentioned last in the Chinese proverb, and not in that there exist bad people, because there have been and always will be such people on the planet. All of the previously mentioned was intended only to ask questions to which answers are still to come through the offered final solutions to the problem. Thus, finally, I would like to invite you to follow the link that is part of the video description. Carefully watch the condensed and summarized version of the presentation that's presented by a team of internationally recognized lawyers who had started the legal proceedings with an aim of effectively protecting ordinary people from persecution to which they are exposed due to the invisible enemy pandemic.